Hey everyone. Alright, so I'm back to working on this drawing. I think the last time when I left off with this, I had just started it and I was in the block-in phase. So I was kind of just trying to get the rough picture of this portrait onto my paper and then get the placement right. I marked the center and I sort of worked from the outside or from the inside outward, and then tried to kind of get my drawing in a pretty good place. So what I've done between now and then is I've taken my main shadow shapes and I've just added a little bit more of a crisp outline so that when I trace this from my transfer, I have something that I can easily identify. And then when I transfer it with my oil to the panel, which is the panel that I'll be bringing into the MFA to do my painting, I'll be able to just get a decent simplification of the portrait, concentrating on the main shadow shapes. So I've outlined some of the shadow shapes underneath the eyebrows, under the eyelids and around the eyes, underneath the nose and underneath the top lip, and then just the outline of the head and the hair. And so everything else, I'm sort of in the middle of this. So everything else around the portrait is still kind of lightly sketched in. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to finish off this drawing so that I can get it transferred. And it'll probably be kind of a short video. I don't know if I'll record the entire thing. It might be kind of make for a boring video, because I don't think there's much as far as explanation that I really need to go over. All I really want to do is continue the work that I've already started and just getting a nice line drawing, something that will be easy to trace for my transfer. So I'm just going to get to work. So I think the interesting thing about going from the sketch phase to this sort of graphic phase of the drawing, where I'm outlining the shadows, is it takes the drawing and it goes from sort of a sketchy look, something that you might find in a sketchbook, to a drawing that, although it's simplified, the form starts to kind of pop and emerge from that sort of loose sketch that I've achieved so far. So what I'm looking at right here, he's wearing it looks like a big medallion around his neck, and there's almost like a sash that's holding it on. And so between the sash and the rest of his outfit here, I see that there's a little bit of a shadow. You can see it really right here, and I'll fill it in. These are the shadows that I'm sort of looking at. I don't want to just draw lines just for the sake of adding a bunch of lines here. I want to look for shadows, and any place that I can, I want to try to emphasize those shadow shapes. So there's another one right here. It sort of comes down. Sort of shaped like that. Right. So these are the shapes that I want to transfer to my panel. And then after I get the oil transfer done, it'll look like a simple line drawing. Then I can take my washes and I can go and just add in some dark layers into the shadows so that I can start with a different value, start differentiating the shadow shapes from the rest of the lines. So there's another one right here. Comes up over this wrinkle. And this is also the point too in the drawing where from that sort of sketched, there's sort of a ghostly sketched version of this drawing underneath what I'm drawing over it. If at any point I see something that I can decide that I want to change at the last minute, now's a good time to make those changes too. There isn't really a phase in this whole process where you can't make changes. You know, nothing's super, nothing, you don't have to dedicate to anything just because you've made a decision. I can make changes at this point, and then after I transfer, if I see issues with the drawing, I can also make changes. And then as I'm painting, it's always sort of a struggle in the painting process. Painting flips back and forth between gaining the drawing and losing the drawing and then gaining the drawing again. So I just feel like the entire painting process is just in itself a constant struggle of trying to get back the drawing that you've lost and then getting it back and then losing it again and then so on and so forth. So, but hopefully even now with just this outline, I don't have to go too dark in the shadows either. It doesn't really, this is not really a value study. I'm just blocking in the shadows just so I have something to work with. But, yeah, so hopefully you can see now underneath this shadow under the sash has created some dimension. There's even one right up here too I can add. So there's some dimensionality to this, and it sort of it gives the illusion that this is a material that has, it has substance and mass, and that it's layered over another material that has substance and mass, instead of just what it was, which was just a bunch of sort of sketched out lines on a piece of paper. So we're trying to create the illusion of form at every step here without going too overboard. And it's these shadows too now. This one on the sash is pretty flat, but as I come over to the shadow, this is the back of the hand where it meets the pinky, and it turns, as I'm outlining this shadow, I want to think of it as this form that turns down from the light into the dark. And so as I'm tracing this outline, I don't want to just make these arbitrary shapes. I want to outline them kind of pretending that I'm sort of writing the form. Like these shadows here are just kind of sketched in, but as I go in and add my outline, I want to start being more specific with sort of being on that form and creating that shadow shape as something that will give the illusion of form. So sort of a crevice shadow goes back behind the hand. and some of these details too, you want to be specific, but you don't have to get too precious with this drawing, because the transferring is a little bit, you want it to be accurate, but just keep in mind the transferring is kind of a it's kind of iffy, and you lose some of the detail. It's kind of a clumsy process. Clumsy is the word I was kind of looking for. It's a little bit of a clumsy process. And in the end, you end up with something that serves as a good basis for your painting, but everything needs to be kind of rethought over again. Now these shapes up here are not shadow shapes, they're shapes, again, we have the sash. This is the end of the sash, and this is the beginning of his coat, so I can just get a little bit more geometric with these shapes, because they're just two layers that are overlapping each other. This is my third drawing, painting for a master copy at the MFA. I've done two already. I did a Velázquez, and I did the portrait of a boy singing by Henrik Terbruggen. So I've spent a lot of hours so far in the galleries, and I've spent a lot of time with these paintings, and I think the importance of it is not so much that at the end of the day you end up with what I like to call a mediocre masterpiece, and that's no critique or criticism of my own work, but that's just the nature of that's the reality of it, really, of what you get when you study and copy, from masters. You end up getting this sort of mediocre masterpiece, and the point is not to have, because then I have them and they're just sort of like laying around in my studio, usually, or they get stuck in a closet somewhere. The value of it is being able to spend the time with the painting and spend long hours of observation, and as you paint, just soaking in, trying to, when you're looking at the painting and studying the painting, you're trying to imagine how this person painted it, and you're trying to recreate that technique, and the thing is we don't have, a lot of documentation. We have some documentation about process and palettes and things like that. That's good to study before you go in. Any bit of homework that you can do is helpful, but at the end of the day, you really only have accounts of people that were there, maybe. So everything is really secondhand. So it's kind of up to you to try to imagine and recreate the process and building up the layers of these paintings. And it's very meditative, but it's very challenging too at the same time. And a lot of these paintings that I see at the MFA, studying them from pictures is one thing, but then going in and studying the paintings in person is like a totally different thing. And one of my takeaways, or something that I've noticed, is the amount of paint from what it looks like in a picture. Now, as I'm doing this drawing right now, my reference in front of me is just a high quality digital version of this painting on my computer screen. And I can tell you, just from the amount of time that I've spent looking at this painting in person, it looks so different in person than in the picture. And that's one of the good things about spending time with these paintings in person, is you get to see things and you get to become aware of things in these paintings that you can't really notice when you're studying them, either a digital version of it. And it's just kind of fun to do. I joke that when I paint at the MFA, that it's always the nicest studio that I've ever worked in. It's sort of the gallery becomes your studio. There are pros and cons to it. The cons is that when people see you painting, everyone wants to come up to you and be your friend and ask you questions and tell you all about their paintings, which is fun to hear. I do like talking to people in the galleries, but it can get a little distracting when you're trying to get work done. I don't know. I don't think I have any more stories to tell. If you do want to do a master copy wherever you may be, if there's a museum near you, reach out to the heads of the department. I will say, actually, I do have another story I'll tell. When I first reached out to the MFA to do my first master copy, I just used the general contact form on the website. And I, introduced myself and I said, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm an artist, I live in Boston, and I'd like to do a master copy of one of the pieces in the Art of Europe galleries. It was the Velasquez, it was the first one I did. And I got a response from someone that I think was just kind of a help desk or an information desk employee. And they basically sort of just said that they don't, oils aren't allowed in the studio. And if I wanted, I could go in and I could bring, a sketchbook and a pencil, and that there's no loose charcoal and there's no paints, no easels, basically like, we have all these like restrictions, but if you want to come and draw, you're totally welcome to do that. And for a few months after that, I was just kind of dejected, and I was like, okay, I guess I thought I was able to do master copies, but maybe they changed their policy. I wasn't quite sure when that policy change had taken place, but I just sort of took them at their word. But then another teacher of mine, I told him, and he was like, reach out again, ask to be put in touch, say you have a question for the heads of one of the departments. So in this case, it was the head of the Art of Europe. And I did that, and then they put me in touch with the head of the Art of Europe. And I asked the same question, and they were like, yeah, sure, let me know which one you want to paint. And then they gave me the schedule. There's like a schedule that they're allowed to come and make the copies. It's like during the week, 10 to 4 during the week. and my museum at the MFA is closed on Tuesdays. So Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 10 to 4 are the hours that I can go in and work. And then I have to there are some other rules that you have to follow and specifications. There are limitations to the size of the panel. You can, I think, pretty much work as large as you want. It just has to be a 10% difference, larger or smaller by 10% of the original painting that you're doing. So that being said, the first thing they have you do is they schedule a time with you to come in, and they measure your panel or your canvas, and they have a big official stamp, and they stamp the back of it, and the stamp says that this painting is a copy that was made at the MFA Boston at the MFA Boston, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and then they write you a little permission slip that has the date that the panel was stamped, and then they give you a month from that date. So as soon as they stamp the panel, the clock starts, and then you have a month to work. And then you email them, you just let them know what days you plan on going in. So every time I go in, I email them the day before and I say, hey, I'm going to be going in, painting at 10 o'clock or whatever. And then they just notify the security guards. Because I've also had security guards too approach me in the galleries and say, you can't be here. There's no painting allowed. I don't know if it's like the best kept secret, of the MFA. Painting in the galleries. Allowed or not allowed. Seems to be hotly debated, but I just show them if they give me any trouble. I just show them my little slip, and they usually say, okay, you're fine. But it's really fun to do. So, I don't know if I probably won't record this entire outline, but I think you can kind of see the level of detail that I'm going for. Like with these little badges or medallions up here, I don't have to put in anything that I draw. I'm going to end up having to trace over and then trace again for the transfer. So I only add as much detail as will be helpful for the transfer and for just getting the drawing of it. And then anything beyond that, I will make those paint in the painting. Hope I'm not blocking the camera. Filming while you do this is always, it's the production aspect of it that always adds another level of complexity, and it's something that I do not have a gift for film production, which is why I'm always kicking my easel or it's my camera stand, my camera being my iPhone, which has a pretty good camera. It takes pretty good quality video. But my easel or my tripod, I should say, is just an easel. Because I don't have any fancy equipment yet. Maybe someday. But for right now, my resources go back into my art making materials. So down here, there's like a sort of this lighter, delicate. It's like a decorative material. It's sort of weaves in and out, or it has some ripples in it. Those are the sort of things too that I can kind of capture. I don't want to generalize those ripples too much. If I can sort of capture them early. I'll be good to go once I start painting. The painting itself in the MFA is huge too, by the way. I forget what the dimensions are, but it's a pretty large painting. So the part of it that I'm doing is just a cropped in version of it. This is almost actual size. So anyways, I think this is probably making for kind of a boring video now that I've run out of things to say. So this is almost done anyways. It's kind of getting to the point where I think I'm just going to finish these I'll finish the rest of these outlines. I'll work on some of the simple shapes of the decorations at the top of the chair. These lines in the middle are they're like little lines and ripples and shapes that go through this sash. I can just sort of lay them in. And then so I don't think I'm going to film the actual transferring of this, because I have another video, the video of the cast painting demo, where I do a whole, actually I think it's free on YouTube as well, but I have a video where I go over the process, and it's just the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's a small painting or a large painting. I go through the same steps to do an oil transfer to my canvas or my panel, so you can check that out if you're interested in learning how to do that. It's pretty easy. So probably where I will, after I finish this drawing and transfer it, I'll try to do a little bit of filming at the MFA. I don't know if they allow, I know they allow pictures, but I don't know if they allow like actual like filming with video. So I will probably just try to do just a little bit of it quietly, and then what I might do is I might add some voiceover afterwards. And I can kind of talk about my process a little bit, but I think it'll be good to see. Okay, I think we'll probably end it there, and I'll work a little bit more on this, and then we will pick up in the gallery.